Hello, welcome to Calcarn Farms. Today we're going to do a seed sowing guide on Darlingtonia, which actually isn't any different from sowing Sarracenia or Venus flytraps or even temperate drosera, but I realized I don't think we've actually ever done this before. So I was actually just getting ready to sow the Darlingtonia seeds here, and Danielle was like, why don't we do a video about this? And spontaneity in action. So we wheeled this cart out and we're going to do that. So these are Darlingtonia seeds that we collected here off of our big mother plants last year. I think they are like a little self-fertile, but they do way better if you cross two different clones. So that's what we've done here, is cross two different clones of Darlingtonia together. They're in the same botanical family as Sarracenia and even Helianthera. Probably lots of you have seen what Sarracenia seeds look like. Maybe you've made some of your own, or maybe you've seen us talk about it in one of our other videos. But that is a big clump of Darlingtonia seeds right there. They're kind of the same color as Sarracenia seeds. I would say they're about the same size, but probably you can see that they're also covered in these like very, very tiny little micro bristles. Peter noticed this years and years ago. And Peter and I used to go and see Darlingtonia in the wild together. And one of the things that we noticed, there was a really beautiful site that I don't think you can get to anymore because the road totally deteriorated, but it was called Bear Wallows. And you could go and see these big wallows, which is where the bears get into the mud and the water to cool off. And then surrounding each one was Darlingtonia. So there's like these big bear bathtubs out in the high country in Northern California, and just Darlingtonia circling each one. And it really gave us this idea of like, oh wow, I bet you somehow the bears are moving these seeds. So that was something that Peter came up with. I don't think mainstream science is super locked both hands onto it, but I actually truly do believe it. And another thing that I noticed and added to it, my little part, is if you go and see Darlingtonia in the wild, the seeds are also all stuck up inside the seed pod. They go from being pendulous like this, and then when they get pollinated, they turn upright like that and make like this little goblet, and the sides crack, so some seeds can fall out. But if you're walking in there, the old seed pods are still all full of seeds, and I think they probably wait there for the bears. And then when they walk by, the scapes spring back and forth and shoot them out. They don't get stuck in fur like really, really crazily, and I think that's because they need to release when they hit the water. If they got stuck really tightly, like a traditional bird did in the bear fur, then it really wouldn't matter if it got into the right spot. And for those of you who've never been around Northern California, we don't get any rain in the summertime, and the wet areas where Darlingtonia grow, there will be miles of dry, what we call chaparral in between them, which is kind of a scrubby manzanita brush habitat. And so where Darlingtonia could never live. And yet when you find these wet places, there's almost always Darlingtonia in there. There often is. And so that suggests to me that like they probably have some mechanism of finding these wet areas, and why not the bears? Anyways, that makes me think of da bears. Old Saturday Night Live bit. Okay, so we're going to put these guys down. A few of my, if you've watched my seed sowing videos before, you've noticed that, I always have my pots made ahead of time. I often leave about 1/4 of an inch between the soil and the top of the pot, and that's just so they don't bounce around and get into other pots. These are all going to be the same, so it doesn't matter too much. And then I always use a piece of paper. You do want to kind of break these apart because they do stick together with their little spurs, and it's windy out here, so we'll do what we can. Normally I would do this inside. Oh, geez. Yeah, this is definitely more inside work, but we're going to do what we can for the light. And we'll probably get them spread out pretty evenly and not too thick. With seeds, it's always, you want to get as many in there as possible for space purposes. But then if they're too close, that's where rot can happen. I try to get it all around the edge. My traditional tapping technique to lay the seeds down, and kind of watching out for those big clumps before they fall off the edge. And that's about it. I still have 18 more pots to do. I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. But if you do manage to get your Darlingtonia to flower, congratulations. That's definitely a merit badge territory in horticulture. And then if you make some seeds, might as well give them a shot. They can take a long time to grow, maybe like 3 to 5 years to get a plant that we traditionally sell for like $30. So this isn't beginning turf, and this isn't for the impatient, but it definitely can be done. So I was just sowing the rest of these seeds, and I realized, I forgot something. Stratification. Probably if you've grown carnivorous plants from seeds at all, you've heard us talk about stratification. What does that mean? 4 to 6 weeks of cold and wet, which is actually why I'm doing them right now. I realized I should have done these a couple of weeks ago because we are running out of cold here in California. It's February 10th. We probably have another month of cold nights to make these guys grow. But if you don't stratify them, they often won't germinate, or usually won't. So 4 to 6 weeks of cold and dark, and then go ahead and bring them out into the spring or under lights to have them germinate.